It was supposed to be just another job. Fix a door, take the cash, and move on. But the moment I stepped inside, everything changed. The house, the man, the air between us, it was all different than I expected. Something about him pulled me in, something deeper than a simple repair. What started as a job soon became a question I wasn't ready to answer, and that night would change everything. The kind of change that starts with a door, but opens so much more. It's funny how first impressions can shape everything. You walk in with a mindset, expecting things to unfold a certain way. Then the moment hits, and you realize you were never even close. I thought I had it all figured out when I pulled up to Julian's place. A simple fix, a routine job, nothing more. But as soon as I rang that doorbell, I realized I'd stepped into something much deeper than I expected. The house itself was the kind of place you'd expect someone with money to live in. Sleek, modern, every corner perfectly designed. It was the kind of place where everything looked like it belonged in a magazine, and I didn't quite feel like I belonged there. My boots echoed on the polished concrete floor as I stepped inside, and I couldn't help but feel out of place in my worn work shirt and jeans. But there was something about the way Julian greeted me that made me forget my insecurities. He didn't seem like the kind of guy to be intimidated by a handyman in a worn-out shirt. If anything, he seemed genuinely interested. His voice, warm and calm, welcomed me into a world I wasn't sure I was ready for. He had this presence, this ease about him that made everything around him feel effortless. But there was a layer to him too, something just beneath the surface. I wasn't sure what it was yet, but I could feel it. A pull, an energy, like we were both walking on a line that neither of us was willing to admit was there. And then there was the way he looked at me. You can't really explain it unless you've felt it. It wasn't just a glance. It wasn't the kind of look people give when they're just being polite or making small talk. No, this was different. He looked at me like he was seeing something deeper than just the handyman standing in his hallway. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was something in his eyes that felt searching, like he was trying to figure out who I was, what I was really about, beyond the work shirt and the tool belt. And then I started noticing the small things, the way his gaze lingered just a moment longer than necessary when I walked past him. The way he didn't rush to dismiss me as just another worker. He asked questions, not just about the job, but about me. And for some reason, I found myself answering more than I usually would. I talked about my work, the things that made me tick, the rhythm of my life that I've gotten used to. But with him, it felt different. I was used to clients who barely looked me in the eye, who just wanted their stuff fixed and to move on with their day. But Julian, he wasn't like that. He didn't treat me like a tool to fix his problems. He treated me like someone who mattered, even if only for this brief moment in time, and that was unexpected. It's strange, isn't it? How a simple glance can shift something in you. How one person, just by being themselves, can make you feel seen in a way no one else has. Julian didn't seem to care about the gap between us, about the fact that I was a handyman and he was, well, whatever he was, the type of person who has sleek designer furniture and a home that could be in a magazine. He just talked to me like we were equals. I fixed the door, straightened the hinges, adjusted the frame. It wasn't a complicated job, but for some reason, I couldn't help but take longer than I needed. I don't know if it was the house, the man, or the way he kept looking at me, but I found myself in no rush. The work wasn't hard, it was simple. But with Julian around, the simplicity seemed to melt into something more complex, something layered. When I finally finished, I stood up and wiped my hands on my jeans. "All done," I said, trying to keep things casual. But when I looked at him, his eyes were still on me, still watching with that intense curiosity. He stepped forward, testing the door with a quiet push. It slid open smoothly, perfectly fixed. Perfect, he said with a smile. It wasn't just the door that was perfect in that moment, though. There was something else between us, something unsaid but understood, and I could feel it in the air. The weight of it. He handed me the payment, more than generous for a job that had barely taken any time at all. But that wasn't the most unexpected part. It was the invitation to stay. He didn't rush me out, didn't just send me on my way with a thank you and a check. He asked me to stay for coffee. And I wasn't sure why I said yes. It wasn't like me to linger. I'd been in and out of people's houses 1,000 times. Fixed their pipes, tightened their doors, patched up their walls. And then I'd leave. I didn't make small talk. Didn't hang around. It wasn't personal. But with Julian, it felt like it could be. Like maybe this wasn't just another job after all. Coffee? He asked again, his voice soft, but there was an edge to it, like he wanted me to say yes. And for some reason I did. I said yes. It wasn't a huge thing, just coffee. But in that moment, something changed. Maybe it was the way he looked at me when I agreed, or the way he smiled after, but something inside me shifted. The door had been fixed, the job had been done, and yet I wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet. As he made the coffee, I found myself sitting on a bar stool, the sound of the grinder in the background, and all I could think was how strange this all felt. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to stay. But here I was, watching him move around his kitchen like it was the most natural thing in the world. And as he turned to hand me a steaming cup, I realized something. I wasn't just here for the coffee. I had no idea what this was, but I knew I couldn't walk away just yet. This wasn't a typical job. Julian wasn't a typical client. And I wasn't sure what was happening. But for once, I wasn't going to be the one to leave. And that was just the beginning. In the next few days, things only became more complicated. More than the door. More than the coffee. There was a connection, an energy that neither of us had expected. I hadn't walked into Julian's home thinking I'd find someone who could make me question everything I thought I knew about myself, about relationships, but here we were. And I was still wondering how in the world I had ended up here, caught in something far deeper than I'd ever planned. The more we spent time together, the more I began to realize. Sometimes, the things you never expect are the things that change you forever. But as the days went by, I knew that whatever this was, it wasn't going to be easy. Julian and I were from different worlds, and the line between us was something we both knew we couldn't cross, not without consequences. But somewhere in between the coffee and the quiet conversations, I could feel myself slipping, and I wasn't sure I wanted to stop. The more time I spent with Julian, the more I started to notice something that was slowly and surely pulling me in. It wasn't just the house, the design, or the way he moved through the space like he was born to live in it. No, it was deeper than that. It was him, his presence. The way he made me feel like I was something more than just a guy with a toolbox in his hand. And that's when it hit me. Something was shifting between us. I've always kept things simple. You know how it is. You show up, you fix the thing, you get paid, and you leave. That's it. I've built a life around that rhythm, a comfortable routine where emotions were kept at arm's length, where I could avoid attachment by keeping my work and my personal life as separate as possible. But somewhere along the way, that line began to blur, and I started to feel it more and more with each passing day. It started small, just little moments where I caught myself lingering a bit longer than I should have. Conversations that felt less like business and more like two people actually connecting. At first, I told myself I was just being polite, just following the usual routine, but deep down, I knew something was changing. Something bigger than a simple job. I remember the first time it really hit me, when Julian offered me coffee. It wasn't like any other job I'd done. I've been to countless homes, fixed thousands of things, and have had clients offer me everything from a glass of water to a quick handshake at the end of the job. But with Julian, it was different. He wanted to spend time with me. Not because it was expected, not because he had to, but because he genuinely seemed to want to connect. And for some reason, I found myself saying yes. I had no intention of staying. I wasn't supposed to stay. But I did. The coffee wasn't just about the drink, it was about the space between us, the way our words lingered in the air. The way Julian looked at me, not just as a handyman, but as someone he wanted to know. It felt like he was seeing something in me that no one else had. And the more we talked, the more I realized he was actually listening. Really listening. In a world where people are always rushing, always too busy, Julian's attention felt like a rare thing, something I wasn't used to but desperately needed. And that was the first shift. The boundaries started to shift. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It wasn't just about the coffee or the casual conversations. It became something more, something that felt real. That was the thing I couldn't shake. There was a connection between us. I could feel it growing in subtle ways that I wasn't entirely prepared for. Julian was the kind of guy who seemed to have it all figured out. His life was polished, everything in its place. His home, his career, the way he carried himself. He wasn't the type to show vulnerability, but I could see it in him, that quiet vulnerability. Maybe it was because I had my own scars, my own hidden layers, that I could sense it in him. It was like we were two people standing at the edge of something, looking at each other from a distance, unsure whether we should step forward or retreat. But step forward we did, slowly. Each time we met, the tension between us grew. The connection grew deeper. There were moments when I'd catch his eyes, and I'd feel this surge of warmth, like there was something unspoken passing between us. His smile would linger just a little too long. His words would carry a weight that felt different from the usual small talk. And I'd find myself wondering, is this really happening? It wasn't just about attraction, though that was certainly there, undeniable and undeniable. It was more than that. It was about something deeper, something more emotional, more profound. We were both looking for something. Maybe we didn't know what that something was yet, but we both knew we felt it. A shift in the air, a shift in the way we saw each other. One afternoon, as we spent more time together, I found myself letting my guard down. I wasn't supposed to do that. I didn't do that. But Julian, in his quiet, steady way, made it feel safe. It was like he understood. He wasn't rushing me. He wasn't pushing me to talk about things I wasn't ready to say. He was just there, listening, and when I spoke, it felt like my words meant something. They mattered. There was something about him that was magnetic. He didn't speak much about himself, at least not in a way that demanded my attention. But the more he shared, the more I understood him. Growing up in a divided family, feeling like you belong everywhere and nowhere at the same time, his story felt familiar in some ways. It reminded me of my own experiences, the quiet ache of trying to find a place where you truly fit. I'd been so focused on my own rhythms, work, routine, distance, that I hadn't allowed myself to connect with someone on this level in years. Julian wasn't just a client, wasn't just someone who needed a door fixed. He was someone who saw me, who made me feel like I mattered. I didn't know how to handle it at first. I resisted it, told myself it was nothing, that I shouldn't be looking for meaning where there was none. But deep down, I knew it was different. As the days passed, I found myself thinking about him more than I expected. I couldn't help it. It was like this invisible thread had been tied between us, and no matter how much I tried to pull away, it kept pulling me back. We met again, and the chemistry was undeniable. There were more moments, small, fleeting touches, lingering glances that weren't so casual anymore, and each time I felt that pull, that connection, growing stronger, and it wasn't just physical. It was emotional, too. We started to talk about our pasts, the things that had shaped us into who we were. It was vulnerable, raw. It wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. The deeper we went, the more I realized how much I had been avoiding. Avoiding the kind of connection that made you feel like you had to open up, to trust someone enough to let them see the parts of you that you usually kept hidden. I couldn't ignore it any longer. There was something between us, something real, something that went beyond the job. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if I was ready for it, but I wasn't running from it either. I didn't know what this was, but I knew it was worth exploring. The day we shared that kiss, it was quiet, tender, almost like a confession. It wasn't wild or rushed. It was slow, measured. And in that moment, I knew that nothing would be the same. I couldn't pretend this was just a job anymore. I couldn't pretend I didn't feel it. But there was still fear. Fear of what it meant. Fear of stepping into a space I wasn't sure I was ready to navigate. We both had our walls. We both had our insecurities. And yet, in that kiss, I felt a moment of release. A moment where everything I had been holding back, everything I had been keeping under lock and key, started to come undone. That was the moment I realized. I couldn't go back. I couldn't unsee the things I'd seen. I couldn't unknow what I'd discovered. This connection wasn't something that would fade away after a kiss. It was real. It was powerful. And it was shifting the way I saw myself and the way I saw Julian. We were both stepping into new territory now. Our worlds, so different, so separate, were colliding in ways neither of us expected. And as I stood there looking at him, I knew that no matter how hard I tried to resist, no matter how much I wanted to keep things simple, this was bigger than both of us. This was something worth exploring, something worth taking the risk for. The boundaries were shifting. And I wasn't sure where they would lead. But I knew one thing, I wasn't walking away this time. The thing about lines, whether physical, emotional, or metaphorical, is that they're rarely as clear-cut as we think. We draw them to protect ourselves, to create some sense of structure, of safety, but deep down we all know that those lines are often more like illusions, boundaries we set to keep the world at arm's length. But sometimes, the line you think you've drawn becomes blurry, and before you know it, you've crossed it. And once you've crossed it, there's no going back. That day, the day the line between us started to fade, everything changed. And I couldn't have been prepared for it, no matter how much I tried to convince myself I was. I remember the moment clearly. It was late afternoon, the kind of light that makes everything look softer, almost like the world is holding its breath. Julian had invited me over again. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just about a job. It wasn't just about a coffee or a conversation about design or family. This time, there was an unspoken weight in the air, a heaviness that neither of us could shake, though we didn't say a word about it. I walked into his home, like I had so many times before, but this time it felt like I was stepping into something much more intimate. His presence in the space felt bigger, more significant. I didn't know how to explain it, but I could feel it, the subtle shift, the change in the dynamic between us. The way he looked at me when I entered, the way his gaze lingered a little longer than usual, a quiet acknowledgement of everything that had been building between us. Julian made no effort to hide it. He didn't try to cover up the tension that had been simmering underneath the surface. Instead, he leaned into it, and I could feel it too. It was like we were both standing on the edge of something neither of us could ignore. He didn't say anything, but there was a quiet invitation in the way he spoke, in the way he moved, in the way he simply was around me. And despite everything inside me telling me to hold back, to keep my distance, to protect myself from the vulnerability I could feel creeping in, I stayed. The thing about vulnerability is, it's not always as easy to control as we like to think. You can try to guard yourself from it, but it has a way of seeping through the cracks when you least expect it. And in that moment, I realized just how much of me I had already allowed Julian to see. We didn't rush into things. That's not how it happened. It wasn't sudden or impulsive. It was more like a slow, steady pull, a gradual letting go. But it was clear that something was shifting, something neither of us could deny. We had crossed the line without even realizing it, and I wasn't sure how to get back to the way things were. I remember the way he touched my arm, so casual, yet it felt like everything. The simple gesture, the warmth of his skin against mine, it was enough to make my heart race. And in that moment I realized how much I had been holding back, how much I had been trying to protect myself from the feelings I couldn't ignore. And I think Julian sensed it too. He didn't rush me, didn't pressure me. He just was. And that, more than anything, made me question the walls I'd built around myself. There was no turning back after that. Not because we'd done anything dramatic or life-changing, but because we had crossed a threshold, a point where the emotional walls I'd so carefully constructed had started to crumble. There was no hiding behind professionalism anymore, no retreating to the comfortable distance of just a job. The connection between us had become undeniable, and I couldn't pretend it didn't matter anymore. I think Julian felt it too. He was different. He wasn't just the perfect, polished man I had imagined. No, there was something deeper, something more real behind the curated exterior. In those quiet moments, when he let down the walls he had built, I saw it. He wasn't just playing a part. He was being himself. And that was the thing I hadn't expected. That's what was drawing me in, slowly, inexorably. He was everything I thought I couldn't have. His life was neat, controlled, beautiful in a way that felt so far removed from mine. I had always prided myself on keeping things simple, work, home, nothing more. But Julian made me question that simplicity. He made me wonder if maybe there was something more I was missing. Maybe there was more to life than just fixing things and walking away. Maybe there was room for more than just routines and boundaries. The more I spent time with him, the more I realized how much I had been denying. I had been afraid of feeling too much, afraid of letting someone in. But Julian, his presence, his quiet understanding, made it hard to keep holding on to that fear. The way he looked at me when I spoke, the way his hand brushed against mine, the way his eyes softened when he listened to me, it all started to break down the walls I had so carefully built. And then, one night, it happened. The line we had both been dancing around for so long, we crossed it. And we didn't even talk about it. We didn't need to. The tension between us was palpable, undeniable. And in that moment, when he looked at me, I knew we had both felt it. His lips brushed mine, slow and tender. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a question, an invitation. A silent acknowledgement that we had both stepped into a new territory. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how much I wanted to pull back, no matter how much I wanted to resist, I couldn't, because this was real. This was happening. The kiss wasn't wild, it wasn't rushed. It was careful, deliberate, like we were both afraid of what would happen next. But it was also full of promise. It was the moment where everything shifted, where the unspoken connection between us became undeniable. And as I pulled away, I knew nothing would be the same. We had crossed a line. We had crossed into something that neither of us could ignore. And as I looked at him, standing there, his breath still mingling with mine, I realized something else. It wasn't just the kiss. It was everything that had led up to it. The conversations, the shared moments, the quiet understanding that had been building between us. This wasn't just a fleeting connection. This was something more. We didn't talk about what came next, not right away, but there was an understanding between us. We both knew what had just happened. We both knew that we couldn't go back to the way things were. The line had been crossed, and there was no uncrossing it. What came next, though, was unknown. I didn't know what the future held, didn't know where this connection would lead, but one thing was clear. I wasn't ready to let it go. I wasn't ready to walk away from what we had started. The next day, as I stood there, looking at Julian with all the things unsaid hanging in the air between us, I realized that the real turning point wasn't just the kiss. It was the moment I allowed myself to be vulnerable, the moment I allowed myself to feel something real. And as scared as I was, as unsure as I felt, I knew I couldn't run away from it anymore. The line had been crossed, and there was no turning back. But what came next? What happens when you step over that line and into the unknown? That's what I was about to find out. And I wasn't sure I was ready for it, but I knew one thing. I wasn't walking away from this. Not now. Not ever. It's strange how life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. One minute you're living by the rules you've set for yourself, your comfort zone, your rhythm, and then, in the blink of an eye, something shifts, and you're left standing there staring at the unknown with nothing but a feeling in your chest that tells you this is the beginning of something new. I never imagined I'd be here. I never thought I'd find myself on the edge of something so real, so raw, yet so uncertain. But here I was, standing at the threshold of an experience that had already begun to unravel everything I thought I knew about myself. Julian and I had crossed a line that neither of us had expected to cross. But the truth is, it wasn't just about that one moment, that kiss that changed everything. It was everything that led up to it, the quiet conversations, the shared glances, the moments where we both let our guards down just enough to let the other in. All of those little pieces were building to this moment, and even though I wasn't sure where it was headed, I knew that I couldn't ignore it anymore. I stood there in the aftermath of it all, uncertain but oddly calm. The fear that had once ruled me, the fear of feeling too much, of letting someone get too close, was still there, but it wasn't as loud as it used to be. In its place, there was something else. Something that felt a lot like hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I was starting to let go of the walls I had so carefully built around myself. I had always been the guy who kept things simple. Work, home, nothing more. I didn't let myself get too attached. Didn't let myself fall for people I knew I could never have. But Julian, with his soft smile and the way he made me feel like I mattered, was different. He didn't just see me as a handyman. He saw me. And that was something I hadn't realized I'd been craving for a long time. I didn't know what was going to happen next. Maybe nothing. Maybe we'd go our separate ways, and this would be nothing more than a fleeting connection. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The way he looked at me, the way he made me feel like I could be more than just the guy with a tool belt, it told me that this was just the beginning of something much bigger, something that might change both of us. I wasn't ready to rush into anything. Julian and I were from two different worlds. We had different lives, different routines. But there was something about the way he made me feel like I belonged, like I was more than just a part of his day, that kept pulling me back. And maybe that's what scared me the most, the idea that I was starting to want more than just a casual fling, more than just a weekend or a moment, but I couldn't keep running from it. For once, I wasn't trying to keep things simple. I wasn't trying to compartmentalize every part of my life into neat little boxes. Instead, I was allowing myself to feel, to really feel, what was happening between us. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I was making a mistake, if this connection was something I was just imagining. But the more I spent time with Julian, the more I realized that the fear wasn't something I had to listen to. The fear wasn't a warning. It was just a reminder of how much I had been holding back, how much I had been afraid to let myself feel. And here's the thing about fear. It's natural. It's human, but it's also something we can choose to move beyond. It's something we can choose to embrace, to work through, instead of letting it dictate our lives. That's what Julian and I were doing, working through the fear, through the uncertainty, through the unknown. And maybe that's what made this whole thing feel so different from anything I had ever experienced before. As we sat together that evening, the air between us thick with everything unspoken, I realized something that struck me with the force of a revelation. This wasn't about crossing a line. This wasn't about breaking rules or following a set path. This was about embracing something new, something neither of us could predict, something neither of us could control. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the point was to let go of control, to stop trying to fit everything into a box that made sense. Maybe life wasn't about always having the answers, about always knowing what came next. Maybe it was about embracing the mystery, about stepping into the unknown with someone who made you feel like you were worth taking a chance on. And that's exactly what Julian had done for me. He had made me realize that it was okay to not have everything figured out. It was okay to be scared, to not know where things were going, as long as we were both willing to take the journey together. So, I let go. I let go of the need for certainty, of the need to control everything. And in that letting go, I found freedom. I found the freedom to be myself, to feel whatever it was I was feeling without apology, without fear. And the more I embraced it, the more I realized that this was the beginning of something real, something that wasn't based on rules or expectations, or even the need to make sense of it all. It was about two people, from different worlds, coming together to see what they could create. That night, when Julian looked at me and asked if I was ready to take the next step, I didn't hesitate. I didn't need to. I was already there. I was already in it. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of what might happen next. Because deep down, I knew that what we were starting was worth the risk, worth stepping into the unknown together. I didn't know where this was going. Maybe we'd figure it out along the way. Maybe we wouldn't, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that we were here, in this moment, together, and that was enough. As we sat together, our hands intertwined, I realized that this feeling, this connection, wasn't something I had expected. But it was something I had been waiting for without even knowing it, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it. With him. As I look back on everything that has brought me here to this moment, it's hard to believe how far things have come. What started as a simple job, fixing a door in a beautiful home, has turned into something far deeper, far more meaningful than I could have ever imagined. I used to think I had everything figured out. My life was predictable, my routines set in stone. I had walls around my heart, walls that kept everything and everyone at arm's length. I never let myself get too close to people, never allowed myself to need anyone, because I didn't want to risk getting hurt. I kept things simple, kept my emotions in check, kept my life as clean and neat as the tools in my toolbox. But then, Julian happened. And the walls I had so carefully built around myself, walls that I thought kept me safe, started to crumble. It's funny how something as small as a door can be the catalyst for something so big, something so unexpected. One small repair, one chance encounter, and suddenly, I was questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. Julian wasn't just another client. He wasn't just another job to check off my list. No, he was something more. Something different, something that made me realize that maybe I didn't have all the answers I thought I did. Maybe it wasn't about playing it safe all the time. Maybe it was about feeling, about embracing the unknown, and about being open to whatever life throws your way. The more time I spent with Julian, the more I realized that I wasn't just fixing doors, I was fixing pieces of myself that I didn't even know were broken. He made me see that it was okay to let my guard down. It was okay to be vulnerable, to feel things I wasn't sure I was ready to feel. And the best part, He didn't just accept me for who I was. He saw me. He saw past the handyman, past the walls I built, and he saw the person I had been hiding all along. And in that seeing, something shifted. A door inside me opened, one I didn't even realize was there, and I walked through it. No more pretending. No more hiding. No more keeping everything neatly packaged in a box where nothing could touch me. I was ready to embrace the chaos of it all. I was ready to feel everything, to take risks, to let myself fall into something that could be real. The truth is, real connections don't come with guarantees. There are no promises that things will work out, no guarantees that you won't get hurt along the way. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The uncertainty, the possibility. Because if we only ever stuck to what we know, if we only ever played it safe, we'd miss out on the most beautiful parts of life, the parts that come when we take that leap of faith, when we embrace the unknown. And that's what I did with Julian. We both took that leap together. It wasn't easy, it wasn't smooth, but it was real. And that's what matters in the end. As we move forward, I'm not sure where this journey will take us. There's still so much we don't know, so much we haven't figured out. But one thing I know for sure is that I'm not running from it anymore. I'm not running from him. I'm ready to see where this path leads. I'm ready to build something with Julian, something that's not perfect, not polished, but something that's real. Because sometimes the most meaningful connections come when you least expect them, when you throw away your plans and open yourself up to the possibility of something new. So, if you're out there wondering whether it's worth it to take that leap, to let go of the fear and embrace the unknown, I'm here to tell you, it is. It's worth it. Because real love, real connection, it's not about playing it safe. It's about being willing to risk it all for something that could change you forever. Thank you for taking this journey with me, for being here, for listening, for feeling every moment along the way. If this story has resonated with you, if you found something in it that speaks to your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, share your own experiences, and let's keep this conversation going. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more real, raw, and unforgettable stories like this one. Because sometimes the most unexpected moments are the ones that change us for good. So let's keep embracing the unknown together. Because who knows? The next chapter could be the start of something even bigger, even more beautiful than we ever imagined. And I'm ready for it. Are you?